I can still smell the smoke when I close my eyes, even now, 43 years later. It creeps into my dreams like an unwanted visitor, that acrid, choking scent of burning wood and something darker, something that smelled like the death of everything I'd built. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where all good stories start, back when the world still made sense, back when I believed that love could conquer anything, that family meant sanctuary, that blood was thicker than betrayal. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and I'm 78 years old now, though some days I feel ancient as the hills themselves. I've lived a long life, longer than I deserved perhaps, but not long enough to forget the night they tried to kill me and my daughter. Not my son, you understand. Never him. He was the golden one, the chosen one, the one who could do no wrong in his father's eyes. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Old age does that to you, makes your mind jump around like a stone skipping across water, touching down in different places, never quite settling. I met Richard Whitmore when I was 22 years old, fresh out of secretarial school, working at a law firm in downtown Philadelphia. He was 35, already a partner, already wealthy, already married to his ambition. He had these grey eyes, the color of winter storms, and when he looked at me, I felt like I was the only person in the world. Isn't that how it always starts? With feeling seen, feeling special, feeling like you've finally found the person who understands the secret language of your soul. We married 6 months later, against my mother's wishes. She said he was too old, too controlling, too cold beneath all that charm. But I was young and stupid and in love, and I thought I knew better. We had 2 children. Thomas came first, and from the moment he drew his first breath, Richard claimed him as his own in a way that felt less like love and more like ownership. Then came Sarah, 3 years later, born on a rainy October morning when the leaves were falling like tears from the trees. She was mine from the start, I knew it, felt it in the way she curled against my chest, in the way she looked at me with those dark eyes that mirrored my own. Richard barely glanced at her in the hospital. He wanted another son, you see. A spare heir for his kingdom of money and power and cold, calculated control. The years passed the way years do, slowly and then all at once. Thomas grew up to be his father's shadow, learning early how to manipulate, how to charm, how to take what he wanted without apology. Sarah grew up to be sunshine in human form, all kindness and laughter and hope despite the darkness that lived in our house like a fourth family member. She was 17 when it happened, 17 and full of dreams about college and art school and escaping the prison of her father's expectations. Thomas was 20, already working at his father's company, already wearing suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, already looking at me with the same contempt his father had perfected over 26 years of marriage. I should have left earlier. I'd thought about it 1,000 times, planned it 100 times, but Richard had made sure I had nothing of my own, no money, no car in my name. No credit cards, no escape route that wouldn't leave me destitute on the streets. And I couldn't leave Sarah behind. Never Sarah. So I stayed and endured and counted down the days until she turned 18 and could run far away from all of us. The night started like any other Thursday. Dinner at 7, silent except for the scraping of forks against plates and Richard's occasional pronouncements about politics or business or whatever kingdom he was trying to conquer. Sarah was quiet, pushing food around her plate, and I knew something was wrong. Mother's intuition, they call it, that sixth sense that lets you feel your child's pain even when they're hiding it behind smiles. After dinner, she came to my room, tears streaming down her face, and told me she was pregnant. I held her while she sobbed, felt her body shake against mine, whispered that everything would be all right even though I knew it wouldn't be, couldn't be, not in this house. The father was her boyfriend, a sweet boy from her art class named Michael, a boy with kind eyes and calloused hands from working construction to pay for community college. A boy Richard would never approve of, would never allow into the family, would never see as anything more than garbage to be disposed of. Sarah wanted to keep the baby, wanted to marry Michael, wanted to build a life full of love instead of money. And I wanted that for her more than I'd ever wanted anything in my entire life. But we made a mistake. We thought we could plan in secret, thought we could prepare quietly, thought we could wait until she turned 18 in 3 weeks and then slip away in the night like ghosts. We didn't know that Thomas had been listening at the door. We didn't know that he'd gone straight to Richard. We didn't know that they were planning something worse than we could imagine. It was a Saturday night when it happened, 2 weeks after Sarah's confession. Richard had sent her to the movies with Thomas, said they needed to spend quality time together as siblings. I should have known something was wrong. Richard never encouraged closeness between the children unless it served his purposes. But I was tired, so tired from years of walking on eggshells and swallowing my words and pretending everything was fine. So I went to bed early, took one of the sleeping pills my doctor had prescribed for the insomnia that plagued me, and drifted off into darkness. I woke to the smell of smoke. Not the pleasant smell of a fireplace or candles, but thick, toxic smoke that filled my lungs and made me cough so hard I thought my ribs would crack. The room was dark, illuminated only by an orange glow seeping under the door, and for a moment I thought I was dreaming, trapped in some nightmare my medicated mind had conjured. But the heat was real. The smoke was real. The terror that seized my heart was devastatingly, horrifyingly real. I ran to the door and grabbed the handle, felt the metal burn my palm even through the sleeve of my nightgown. I tried to turn it but it wouldn't budge. Locked. I pounded on the door, screamed for help, screamed for Richard, screamed for anyone who might hear me. And then I heard the scraping sound, the terrible grinding sound of nails being driven into wood, and I realized with a clarity that cut through the smoke and fear like a knife through butter, they were nailing the door shut. They were trapping me inside. They were burning the house down with me in it. Time does strange things in moments like that. It stretches and compresses, makes seconds feel like hours and hours feel like seconds. I don't know how long I stood there, pounding and screaming and begging, but eventually my survival instinct kicked in stronger than my shock. The window. I had to get to the window. I stumbled through the smoke, feeling my way along the wall, choking and gasping, clinging to any hope I could grasp. The window was old, painted shut multiple times over the years, but fear gives you strength you didn't know you possessed. I grabbed the porcelain lamp from my nightstand and smashed it against the glass, felt the shards rain down on my arms, felt blood mix with sweat and tears on my skin. The fresh air that rushed in was like a resurrection, like being born again into a world that still had oxygen and hope. I knocked out the remaining glass with my bleeding hands and looked down at the ground 2 stories below, at the rose bushes Richard had planted years ago, their thorns gleaming in the firelight like tiny daggers. But then I heard it. A scream. Sarah's scream. Coming from somewhere inside the burning house. And in that moment, I understood the full scope of their evil. They'd brought her back. They'd put her somewhere in this inferno. They were going to kill us both and make it look like an accident, a tragic house fire that claimed 2 lives while the men were conveniently away. I don't remember climbing through that window. I don't remember the fall or the thorns tearing my skin or hitting the ground hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. All I remember is getting up, stumbling toward the front door through the flower bed Sarah had helped me plant last spring, trying every window on the first floor until I found one that was unlocked. The kitchen window. I crawled through, fell onto the linoleum floor, felt the heat press down on me like a living thing. The smoke was thicker downstairs, black and oily and full of poison. I crawled on my belly the way they teach you in school, stayed low where the air was clearer, followed Sarah's screams to the basement door. It was locked too, but there was no time for fear, no time for hesitation. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the hallway and smashed the lock until it gave way, until the door swung open and I could see the stairs descending into darkness. She was there, tied to the old furnace, her hands bound behind her back, her face streaked with tears and soot. They'd gagged her but she was still trying to scream through the cloth, her eyes wide with terror and disbelief that her own family could do this to her. I untied her with shaking hands, pulled the gag from her mouth, helped her up the stairs as the house groaned and cracked around us like a dying beast. We made it out through the kitchen window, collapsed on the grass as the fire trucks finally arrived, their sirens wailing like the world's grief made audible. Someone wrapped blankets around us. Someone else asked questions we couldn't answer yet. And across the street, I saw them. Richard and Thomas, standing in the shadows, watching, their faces illuminated by the flames consuming our house. When they realized we'd survived, Richard's expression didn't change, but Thomas's face twisted into something ugly and hateful, and in that moment I saw him clearly for the first time, my son, the monster I'd helped create through years of excuses and denial. The investigation took months. The police found the nails in my bedroom doorframe, found the accelerant they'd poured through the house, found the evidence of planning in Thomas's computer files. Richard's money bought him good lawyers, but it couldn't buy him freedom, not this time. He got 25 years. Thomas got 15. At the trial, they sat side by side in their expensive suits, and neither one of them looked at us, not once, not even when Sarah testified about being kidnapped from the movie theater, drugged, and left to die in our basement. Sarah had her baby 7 months later, a beautiful girl with Michael's kind eyes and Sarah's gentle soul. They named her Eleanor, after me, and sometimes when I hold her, I can almost forget the smell of smoke, can almost forget the sound of nails being driven into wood, can almost forget that the two people who should have protected us the most tried to burn us alive. But here's the thing about surviving something like that, you don't ever fully escape it. The fire may be out, the criminals may be in prison, but the scars remain. Sarah still wakes up screaming sometimes, still checks every door lock 3 times before bed, still can't smell smoke without her hands shaking. And me. I'm an old woman now, living in a small apartment near Sarah and her family, grateful for every sunrise I didn't think I'd see, but haunted by the truth I can never unknow. The truth is this: I loved a man who saw me as property. I raised a son who learned that love was weakness and cruelty was strength. I spent 26 years in a prison I helped build, with bars made of fear and locks made of financial dependence and walls made of the lie that family was sacred, that marriage was forever, that suffering in silence was somehow noble. And it almost cost me everything. It almost cost Sarah everything. Richard died in prison 3 years ago, a heart attack they said, quick and painless. I didn't go to the funeral. Thomas writes letters sometimes, asking for forgiveness, claiming he was under his father's influence, that has changed. I burn them without reading past the first line. Some things are unforgivable. Some betrayals cut too deep for redemption. But Sarah is free in ways I never was. She chose love over money, kindness over power, hope over cynicism. She teaches art at the same community college where she met Michael. They have 3 children now, all of them growing up in a house full of laughter and music and the kind of chaotic, beautiful love that I only dreamed about in my darkest hours. And when I watch them together, when I see Sarah kiss her husband good morning or dance with her daughters in the kitchen or tell her son that he is loved for who he is, not what he achieves, I know that the fire didn't destroy everything. It burned away the lies. It burned away the pretense. It burned away the version of myself who believed that enduring abuse was the same as strength. I survived. We both survived. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the past feels too heavy to carry, I remind myself that survival is its own form of poetry, that every breath I take is a victory they tried to steal, that living well and living free is the only revenge that matters. The house burned to the ground that night, reduced to ash and memory. But from those ashes, Sarah built something better. And maybe that's the real ending to this story. Not the fire, not the betrayal, not the evil that men do in the name of control and pride. But the choice Sarah made to break the cycle, to love differently, to be the mother I couldn't be because I was too afraid, too trapped, too convinced that staying was somehow noble. I'm 78 years old, and I carry the scars of that night on my hands and arms and soul. But I also carry something else. The knowledge that when it mattered most, when death was breathing down our necks and escape seemed impossible, I chose my daughter. I chose love. I chose life. And that choice, that one moment of clarity in the smoke and flames, that desperate crawl through a burning house to save the person who mattered most, that was the first real choice I'd made in 26 years. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't survived, if their plan had worked, if Sarah's scream hadn't pierced through the smoke and sleeping pills and fear. Would anyone have questioned it? Would anyone have investigated? Or would Richard and Thomas have collected the insurance money and gone on with their lives, 2 men who successfully erased the women who inconvenienced them? But we did survive. And that survival, painful and complicated and marked by nightmares and triggers and the long, slow work of healing, is everything. It's the story I tell myself on hard days. It's the legacy I leave behind. It's the proof that evil doesn't always win, that sometimes the victims escape, that sometimes love is stronger than hate, That sometimes a mother's desperate need to save her child can overcome locked doors and walls of flame, and the certain knowledge that dying would be easier than fighting. They nailed my bedroom door shut and set the house on fire. They thought that would be the end of the story. But it was just the beginning of Sarah's freedom, and in a strange way, the beginning of mine too. Because I learned that night that survival isn't pretty or easy or triumphant in the way stories usually tell it. Survival is bloody hands breaking through glass. Survival is crawling through smoke when your lungs are screaming for clean air. Survival is choosing to fight when giving up would be so much simpler. Survival is waking up every day and deciding that the people who tried to destroy you don't get to write the ending to your story. And this is mine. Scarred, imperfect, haunted by smoke and memory, but alive. Still alive. Still here to tell it.